A year ago in seats like Sedgefield, the unthinkable happened. Thousands of lifelong Labour voters deserted Labour for the Conservatives.
The bond of trust in areas like this, in Labour areas, in the so-called red wall areas, was always there, and that bond was broken.
Labour had very much moved into metropolitan centres and all of the, the woke culture and these sort of things, which doesn't sit in this part of the world. It's not the working man's view of life.
We polled 45 of the red wall seats the Conservatives won at the last general election to see what voters are thinking now. Here's the share of the vote across those seats at the last election, and here's what our poll suggests they're doing now. The Tories down to 41%, Labour up to 47%. We looked at where the Tory vote was going, and 16% of it, according to our poll, was going to don't know. That could be encouraging for the Tories, means they might get those voters back. 7% of it is going direct to Labour. People who came over from Labour last time, now going back. Our analysis suggests this would mean the Tories losing 80% of the seats we polled, enough to wipe out their majority. You voted Tory, but you don't think they're
I thought they might have changed and gone for the common man, but I think it was just false promises.
Never again, you think?
I don't think so. You'd have to pull something out of the bag for me to vote them again.
Our poll of the red wall seats suggests the Tories still have a lead on issues like the economy and defence in seats like this. But when we asked voters who shares your values, Labour's got a lead. Who stands up for people like me, another Labour lead. And who actually cares about the North and the Midlands, an even bigger Labour lead over the Tories.
It's definitely a north-south divide between the two, down south to here.
And which side are the Tories on?
Down south, unfortunately.
Voters we polled said confusing messaging over COVID was a major negative for the Tories, but many said Dominic Cummings' trip to Barnard Castle during lockdown was a big factor, feeding a sense there was one rule for the elite, another for ordinary people.
It sent exactly that wrong message in terms of us and them, and all I can say is that there isn't an us and them, and I can't make any excuses for what happened on that. I think that it's a thing that's gone, it's past, and we move on.
Straight after the election, Boris Johnson headed here to Sedgefield to celebrate his victory. Red Wall MPs speak of his special appeal in red wall seats.
We've been Labour all of our lives, but we wouldn't vote Labour. Would not never vote Labour, not when you had Corbyn in.
Did you used to, though, before?
Yeah, we've been Labour all of our lives.
Yes.
But then we voted Conservative because of Mr Corbyn.
But because it's Mr Johnson, I absolutely think he's the best Prime Minister there's ever been.
He's going to prove to be the best Prime Minister,
Hopefully,
I think.
He is.
What do you like about him?
Everything.
Everything.
But there are signs that Boris Johnson's appeal in seats like this might, for some, be wearing off. Signs, too, that Keir Starmer might be making inroads. We asked people who voted Conservative in red wall seats in the last election what they thought of the two-party leaders. 42% said they thought Keir Starmer was doing a good job as Labour leader. 25% of these Conservative voters said they thought Boris Johnson was doing a bad job. At the moment, if you were thinking about it, it's Boris Johnson that would drive you away from the Tories a bit.
Yes.
But he was the one that pulled you in a bit last time.
He did, because he always seemed to be on the ball, and he was humorous, and he built us up as we were a little bit down, I think. And I think he's great at that, but I don't really want a comedian.
As Tony Blair's old seat, there was a special magic for the Tories winning Sedgefield. His old Labour club isn't coming back. It's now a carpet business. And Sedgefield no longer in any party's pocket. Its destiny now, perhaps, a swing seat.
And working from a working class background, so my loyalties would have been historically Tony Blair and Labour, and then
But last time round, did you give the Tories a chance?
I did give them a chance. Yeah, I did.
But next time, it's up for grabs.
Yeah, without question.
You haven't closed your mind to them?
No, I wouldn't say I'd closed my mind. I haven't closed my mind to anybody, though, that's the thing.
Trust on levelling up and on Tory values is thin. The red wall seats gave the Conservative Party its majority a year ago. Now polls suggest they could just as easily wipe it out. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, Sedgefield.
Well, Neil O'Brien is the Conservative MP for Harborough and chair of the Levelling Up Task Force, set up by a group of Tory MPs. He joins us now from Leicestershire. What that data suggests is no matter what your intentions were a year ago, COVID has undone Boris Johnson, and a lot of these voters have seen through him.
Well, I think whatever the polls show at any given time, the key thing is to stick to our promises and deliver the things that we said we would. And we are making progress on that, despite the coronavirus and all the things we're having to do to tackle the virus. You know, we said we'd get 50,000 extra nurses into the NHS, and compared to last year, we've now got nearly 15,000 more already. We said we'd get 6,000 extra. We said we'd get 20,000 extra police officers. We already got 6,000 in the first year. So we are making progress on those big pledges, and we are doing the things we said we would do in terms of bringing in an Australian-style points-based system for immigration. And
yeah, but people aren't convinced, are they? If you listen to them.
The key thing is to do what we promised people and to get on with those things, and then we'll see where we are at the end of the Parliament.
Yeah, but you can't. That's the trouble, isn't it? COVID and the economic impact of it means it's almost impossible for you to deliver on this. I mean, despite all that sort of dodgy Towns Fund money where ministers nodded through millions to each other's constituencies, people are walking away from you in this polling. And despite all the stuff that you've listed, people are saying they would rather go back to Labour. And if you go forwards, you're already levelling down public sector pay for people in these areas. You're going to struggle.
Despite the fact that we've been delivering two of the biggest things in 100 years in Brexit and the fight against the coronavirus, we have actually made quite a lot of progress on levelling up. For example, on schools funding, the bringing up of schools funding to 4,000 for primary schools and 5,000 for secondary schools. That's closing that huge unfair gap that there's been for years and years and years between schools funding in London and schools funding in the rest of the country. And you dismiss the Towns Fund, but we're spending £3 billion doing up town centres across a lot of places that are seriously disadvantaged. Lots of other things we're doing. You know, we've got £2 billion extra spending on housing outside London. There is a genuine, despite all the difficulties at the moment of the coronavirus, there's a lot going on the levelling up agenda, and things like having one of the highest, the national living wage, one of the highest minimum wages in the world, plus tax cuts focused on those who are at the bottom end. These are all things that are going to genuinely help people who are struggling. I don't think we should dismiss those things.
But there's a bit of a danger, sort of, you know, that you've never had it so good here, isn't it? I mean, you're listing all the things that you've done. But you're not listening to what people are saying.
I think it's worth
in the
flagging
poll.
up. Despite we've been going through a very difficult time as a country on the coronavirus. We have spent a much larger share of GDP on helping people and supporting jobs than places like France and Germany, according to the Institute of Fiscal Studies. And things like the furlough, that's been more generous here than it has been elsewhere. And in my own constituency, I've seen how we've spent a huge amount of money on grants for small businesses, loans to support businesses, and now we've got good things like the Kickstart scheme, which is going to help a lot of young people here.
But do you think the pay gap, for example, will have gone up or down over the last year between North and South?
I didn't catch the start of what you were saying.
Well, one of the biggest problems, as you know, is the difference in wages and salaries between northern constituencies and London and the South East. What do you think will have been the impact of the economic disaster of the last year on that? It'll have got worse, won't it?
Well, I think we have certain tools to try and close that gap. And one of the reasons why we're bringing in the national living wage, which, as I say, will be one of the highest minimum wages anywhere in the developed world, is that not just putting more money in the pockets of those who need it most, but also at the same time, we can see from the first couple of years of it that it is closing the earnings gap between wealthier places like London and places like here in the Midlands and places in the North where earnings are lower. So we are actively taking steps to make people better off, and also by raising the starting rate of income tax, raising the starting rate of income national insurance. That means that people also get to take more of that money home at
But the really worrying thing,
before the coronavirus, we had managed to get the level of employment in this country up to
but that was then.
Unemployment right down.
If you look at the data, which I know you have, I mean, the really worrying thing for you is the values question. They don't think that they share your conservative values anymore. They identify with Labour in this research. And next year, you're going to face massive structural deficit, cuts to find. How on earth are you going to win them back over?
Well, I think we've got to demonstrate our values by doing the sort of things we've done during the coronavirus pandemic to try and make sure we keep the country together and help those who are struggling. And we need to keep doing that strongly as we come out of this recession. I think things will get better next year. Things have been very, very difficult for people this year. Of course they have. But next year, I think we will get into an economic recovery. The good news is that this country has managed to buy up more doses of vaccines than pretty much anywhere else in the world. So we will be in a strong position to start getting back to normal more quickly than some other countries. And at that point, we will start to see the economy recovering. But we aren't just going to be complacent. We're also doing active things. We're spending a huge amount of money on things like Kickstart to help young people who have had a really tough time to find work. So we are doing all the things that we can to try and help people who are struggling at the moment and to, have solidarity across the whole country. So I think those are the things we've got to do.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.